Well, welcome back to the Be a Man podcast, where we encourage men to be better men. I'm excited about this conversation we're going to have. Alec, how are you, man?
I'm excited. I'm really happy to be here. I'm doing really well, and I'm glad to be back on the screen. Back on.
Yeah. Well, hey, introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you all about? Where are you located? All those sorts of things.
Sure. So, father, husband, man.
Awesome.
I go by Fatherhood Reforged on Twitter. That's the only social I'm on. I'm on YouTube as well, under the Reforging. It's my own podcast. So I'm based in South Wales, part of the UK.
Okay.
So
Cool.
across the pond from yourself and most of the other men that I actually connect with on Twitter. I have 2 kids, a daughter and a son, whom we homeschool. So we're
Awesome.
part of the big homeschool movement at the moment. Though we've been doing it since they were born. So
Yeah.
not caught up in the. Go ahead.
Is there a movement there? We homeschool as well. We have 4. We homeschool as well. But is there a movement there like there is here?
Yeah, there is, yes. Although what I've found since bothering with a lot of other homeschool dads online, particularly in the States, is that the culture's different, and and sort of the motives are different, and that's a big foundational difference between the two. Is that yes, there's an uptick in homeschooling families, considerably more so in the States, but I think that's tied to the motive and the foundation upon which they homeschool, as opposed to the families in the UK.
What are some of those differences there? Have you found? In your experience?
I found that homeschooling in the States is far more about individual liberty. It's far more about freedom to do, in a multi-layered freedom. So freedom to travel, freedom to teach how you please, what you please, but also freedom on the level of, outside of government institution, basically relying on the government for what is essentially a fundamentally important aspect of their children's upbringing.
Sure.
And I find that's very much core to the States, is that freedom aspect, that liberty, that independence aspect, and that that's a bleed over effect from other aspects of their culture, which I admire entirely, by the way. And it's also the reason that I find my family homeschooling. But I find one of the biggest motives in the UK is much less tailored towards individual freedoms and liberty, and far more related to perhaps they feel they can get a better education outside of public school system, as well as, and this is just speaking from pure personal experience.
Sure.
It's I'm not going to quote any statistics, and I don't want to be held at the firing line, right? But I find that the families in the UK are more inclined to homeschool if their children have additional needs. So that maybe cannot be met very well by the public school system. What happens is those kids come out of school over the COVID lockdowns when the public schools shut, and actually they find that they're fitting in, or they're adapting a lot better and coping a lot better at home than they realized otherwise. And so those are sort of the core differences between homeschooling in the States and the UK that I've found from personal anecdotal experience, just by talking to parents, just by going to socials, going to meetups, going to co-ops, just my experience.
Yeah, I had no intention to talk about this, but this is really interesting because you wonder sometimes, like you hear, some countries are more against, totally against homeschooling, but, and even some states here are as well, but it's just kind of what works for my particular family, and we've had some amazing benefits come from it. But what are some of those key things that you've seen that are like, yeah, this is the way we need to keep doing it?
Yeah, so my homeschooling journey began when I took my family to live in Toronto, Canada for 6 months. I was asked to go over there for work, so away we went. Amazing
Hmm.
experience, amazing opportunity. So we lapped it up. Um, and my wife really went head first then into taking over the kids' education. So,
Hmm.
and what that kind of happened is I found that my wife found herself. Like she
Mm,
really drew a lot of purpose from that role,
that's
um,
cool.
which was unbelievable to see. I always, every time we bring it up, I always say, I feel like, oh, apologies, I feel
You're,
like I fell in love with my wife all over again
mm,
because of just that energy, that bravery, that confidence, that
yeah,
purpose that she just found.
yeah,
Moving to an entirely different continent with no friends, no family,
yeah.
and just taking on everything that was required of her. And she just adapted, overcame, and flourished. So that's one of the big reasons is that my wife gets a lot of fulfillment, and so do the kids. This
Yeah.
another one. I think the sibling bond is much stronger.
Mm,
And I guess I'm basing that on again anecdotal experience. But I find the
hmm.
fact that they learn together, they work together, they live together, and we have a lot more. Um, I want to say we have a lot more, I guess, more influence than say their peers would.
Mm,
So
hmm.
we're able to that familial influence is stronger than say that
Hmm.
peer influence. Where my daughter's 9 now, so she'd really be getting into that sort of
Hmm.
peer-led influence stage at public
Hmm.
school in the public school system. So I find they are so much um, so much closer than they could have been if they were spending every day separate, basically.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Another big one is that my daughter and I'm a boastful dad, I guess, but my daughter's pretty intelligent, and
Hmm.
there's that whole we're able to go further. She's not being held back by sort of the less capable members of the classroom, which is it's a sad fact, really.
Yeah.
You know, so she gets to flourish, and on top of that, my son. We've put a lot into which is proven to be perhaps one of the biggest challenges in the UK.
Hmm.
In particular, we've put a lot into providing an education that suits boys.
Mm,
That
I
is really
understand.
trying to tap into him being a boy and is led by his behaviors, and it's not expecting him to conform, to sit still for 6 to 8
Yeah.
hours a day, to stop talking, to be quiet, to stop fidgeting. So
Hmm.
that's really been a challenge, but it's been a it's been a beautiful endeavor, really, to see him flourish that way and to know full well that, or to see firsthand the behaviors I know would be squashed out of him.
Mm, hmm.
So for us, that's really those are some of the key foundations as to why we started homeschooling. And let's face it, society's only further provided us reason after reason over the last several years.
You're not kidding. Yeah, you are not kidding. I mean, 2020 alone would have had me pull my kids out.
Yep.
Just, yeah. And I understand not everyone's able to or whatever, or there's different circumstances, whatever, and everyone needs to make their own decisions on these things. But I too could say the same exact things that you are for our own family, and and people talk about the social aspect, people talk about this or that, and the social aspect, I tell people, well, sometimes the social aspect's what I want to keep them away from. It's
Yeah.
what's being talked about that I want to keep them away from.
Honestly, I'm surprised the socialization thing is still doing the rounds.
Yeah.
It's such a deadbeat argument that has no grounds whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um,
You just
And
have to be purposeful about it. I mean,
yeah, I mean, you basically, when you homeschool, you just decide, look, I'm going to take responsibility for my kids, which means that
mhm,
you're going to also take responsibility for their socialization and their social lives. And you
yeah,
just need to facilitate that. And it is very easy to facilitate.
yeah, yeah,
There's very few hurdles nowadays. In fact, when we moved to Toronto for those 6 months, my wife reached out to people in Toronto, other homeschooling
mm,
families, and my kids made friends there. It was that
mhm,
easy. She went
mhm.
halfway across the world to a place she'd never been to before, and she found community and went out and interacted. That's as easy as it is.
That's great, man. Yeah, 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 we're part of a co-op too, and our kids are involved in different aspects. My oldest is 13, so I just think about she runs her own little baking business now.
Oh,
And I think
fantastic.
about where she'll spend like 2 days or whatever baking all these things for like a farmer's market or, something like that where she can go sell her stuff. And I'm
Yeah,
just thinking, if she was in school, there's not a chance she'd be able to do any of this. But right
absolutely
now,
not.
she's learning how to sell things, and we make her, keep track. She has spreadsheets. She keeps track of all her expenses, all those things. So she's learning how all the economic side of it works. And she's just learning all in social aspects how to sell things, which I think should be taught probably in schools. And it wasn't, at least when I was in school. So
Yeah, it really
it's
taps
an art.
into the mantra that living is learning.
Mm,
And that's basically what homeschool's all about. You
mm,
can't not learn. Your children can't. And as long as you provide them with the opportunities and the experiences, it's the best way to learn. Is to just live that life.
yeah. 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 I've got a 10-year-old boy, and I can say, hey, let's skip math or whatever today and go fishing for an hour or two. And we'll just go. And, and the lessons we learned there is patience and it's dad and son bonding time. But uh there's just so many opportunities. I think if people really realized it. But it's also, I think society as a whole has geared against that concept because it is challenging, it is difficult, you are making sacrifices there, but
Yep.
you have to weigh it. Is it worth it or not? And in our minds and in your mind, it sounds like it is worth it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is fundamentally a sacrifice. But
Yeah.
as parents, we're meant to sacrifice for our children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where many people find the greatest return on investment is when there's sacrifice involved. Um, and I think just generally, I guess, as a society, we've shifted more towards personal comfort than we have sacrifice. And
Yeah.
so this concept can seem very, very alien to some people.
Yeah. I wonder if you'd talk about that sacrificial love, if you will, as a man, as the father, as a husband. How does that look on a day-to-day basis? Or how should it look in our lives on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, one of the lines I keep throwing at my kids, and some eventually it sticks, and occasionally they'll repeat it back to myself, which is either really rewarding when it's appropriate or really frustrating when they call me out.
I hear you.
But it is there ain't no growth in the comfort zone, right?
You're right. You're right.
Um, and I think that's at the foundation of who I now try to be.
Mm,
Um, as a father, as a husband, as a man, I think particularly, well, I don't want to say particularly as men, I think men and women equally derive purpose and fulfillment from sacrifice, but
mhm.
in different ways, because we're
Yeah,
different. Don't cancel it. Don't cancel me.
you're good. You're
But
right.
yeah, so it people think of these big bold moves of sacrifices. Homeschooling. There's a huge
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice. We are sacrificing one salary in that my wife can't go out to work because she works full time educating our children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lifestyle. It's not an educational choice. It's a lifestyle. You're constantly facilitating it. You're constantly working towards it. It's
Definitely.
constantly in your mind. But it comes from a lot of little things as well. A lot of little sacrifices. And I think that's what equips you as a man to be ready to make those big sacrifices. So, for example, getting up first thing in the morning before everyone to get a workout in, or even to just at any time of the day getting a workout in, that's sacrifice. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're you're putting yourself through discomfort, through pain in many cases, through frustration, through exhaustion, but you're making that sacrifice now so that when you leave that moment behind, you come home, you're energetic, you're ready to be present. Clears the mind, it makes you feel great, you feel accomplished. And I think I keep saying men in particular because we're talking about men, but
Sure.
equally applicable to women in that regard is that
Yeah.
we derive purpose from sacrifice. I don't know anyone who is, well, the happiest people I know, or the happiest or most fulfilled that people feel is when they're serving others, is when they've sacrificed to the benefit of other people. I'm not talking about people making stupid sacrifices they can't afford to make. I think that's a key differentiator. I'm not saying people should be this sacrificial altar upon which they give of themselves until they can give no more.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the balance to strike, is you give to yourself so you can give more. And that's where the workout comes in. That's where the space comes in. That's where the grind every dad faces of work, of earning, of providing. That's the sacrifice men are built for. And we feel, I think, lack of purpose and lack of mission in particular is um, a huge proponent of men's internal suffering today, of the
Mm-hmm.
lack of quality men. And one thing I always say, which has resonated with me for quite a while now, is if men lack a mission, they will make indulgence their mission. So men who drift through life without purpose, without sacrifice, will purely focus on how much can I earn so I can, or how little can I do to maximize my comfort, to maximize my pleasure, to eat as much as I want, eat whatever I want, to watch porn, to sleep with lots of women, to drink excessively. Men will make that their mission, and I think that's a mission for a lot of men right now, is living for the weekend. What can I do now to make sure I can indulge?
Yeah.
I can indulge as much as I can, as often as I can. And
Mm-hmm.
so, without that sacrifice, I think men just become lost,
Mm-hmm.
and they substitute that for indulgence in particular, and selfishness and comfort, and there ain't no growth in the comfort zone. So you realize 10 years
You're right.
later, you are, arguably you're worse of a person because you've had 10 years of indulgence and comfort to compound on top of how bad you were 10 years ago. And you find these people I was one of those people. I know that because I lived it, right? I'm 31 now. I was 29 before I started taking myself seriously, and therefore my family seriously. And I think, and one of the implications is many men think that many men fall either they fall into those two categories. Either they sacrifice nothing and they chase pure indulgence and pure comfort, or they sacrifice far too much, and too much of the wrong stuff. So, for example, I sat in both those buckets simultaneously, in that I would drive myself into the ground with work,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I would neglect everything else to make sure, driven by that sort of that perverted drive to provide, but not realizing that, or not fully realizing or taking seriously enough, actually I need to invest in myself to be able to sacrifice. And without investing in myself, I'm just giving and giving and giving and giving to the point where there's very little left of me.
Yeah.
And what I am giving is diminishing returns. It's poor quality because I'm not a high quality man, so I cannot give high quality provisions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, you nailed it there. That was really, really good. I just, that is a timely word for where we see a lot of men in society today. And it's across the world, really. And I mean, we see it all over in our culture, in families, lack of fathers, and even if there is a father, a lot of times they're not involved in the
Yep.
family. And it comes down to sacrifice. And I mean, you just nailed it there. That was really, really good. I can't add anything to it because that was just good, man. I enjoy hearing other people's perspectives on some of these things that I talk about a lot, but it just the way you put it, it sounds better. We'll say that it sounds a lot better. You're the man. Now, is this the type of things that you post about on your Twitter or X or whatever we want to call it now? Or I know what you post, but other people listening may not know.
I've still not shifted from Twitter to X, and I will still vehemently call them tweets and retweets.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yes, for all those that don't know, that is a lot of the stuff I talk about on my Twitter page. Because I've lived it. Like I said, I've lived a life with no purpose, with no self-respect, with no drive, other than the drive to earn more money. But that's a really shallow drive. And one of the biggest killers for me, and it's something I'm terrified to fall back into, because it was such a default mindset for so long, and the intentionality needs to continue to be there. Because I'll find myself slipping back into that mindset from time to time, and I'll catch myself. But it's apathy. Apathy was the biggest killer for me. I found myself caring about very little, particularly myself. And I wasn't realizing that actually, without self-respect, if I don't respect myself, then I can't respect my family. That was every act of self-disrespect was an act of disrespect towards my family. And it took a long time for me to realize that. And I never had this aha moment. It was a really gradual process for me. You find people have this huge health scare. I did have a health scare. I had an emergency appendectomy. And I was very ill afterwards, very ill afterwards. But that kind of started me on the path. But it was a really gradual process, and I just found somebody. It was on LinkedIn. I found some guy who was talking about some really cool things over the lockdowns and such, and I followed his profile to Twitter, and then he was retweeting all these really cool guys, and I was like, oh, these guys are amazing. This is almost the type of these are the people I've been looking for my entire life, the men I've been looking for my entire life. Because I've always had, my wife and I have always, although we've had secular upbringings, we've always had very strong, almost, for lack of a better word, Christian values. We were the first person, we were the first people that we slept with. We were never about sleeping around. We were never about drugs. We've never really drunk alcohol, and certainly never in great quantities. So we always knew we wanted a family and to be married. We were married at 19. So we've been married a long time. So we always had that. And one thing you'll find in the UK is that's rare. We've very much shifted to a secular country. The faith of our country is very much on its last legs. And I find one thing I do find it's almost like the motives for homeschooling is there's two very different pools when it comes to faith in terms of the States and the UK. I'm
Hmm.
very much more aligned with the States than I am the UK. So that
Well,
that presents itself with additional hurdles. But all of a sudden I found these men that were talking about fatherhood, being a husband, leading, self-respect, family, and these are all the things that I knew that sort of I had deep down inside me,
hmm
and then it just exploded. And I thought,
mm,
do you know what? I need an outlet for everything that's going on, and I don't have an outlet in terms of I don't have anyone that I know in real life that I can call brother,
mm,
and I need an outlet. So I started a Twitter page, and I thought, do you know what? I'm gonna use this as an outlet and shout into the ether of all the things I've always wanted to say.
mm,
And then eventually, people started hearing,
mm,
and people started discovering my page, and I've made unbelievable connections with
mm,
unbelievable gentlemen, the highest quality of gentlemen I've ever come across, and I've yet to replicate that in real life.
mm. I, for all the bad that 2020 was, I think what you're talking about is something good that came of it. A
Yeah,
lot of people came out of the woodwork and said, you know what, maybe there's a chance for a bigger platform here where I can find more a brotherhood, like you're saying,
yeah,
a community of like-minded people, because man, it just felt like we were alone for a long
yeah.
time. And
It
then
did.
all of a sudden you're like, hey, that guy thinks like I did. That guy thinks like I did. That guy
Yeah,
didn't close up his gym in New Jersey, and all these other guys that you're like, well, that person didn't close their church. This person didn't do that. And it's like, okay. And then I'm talking to somebody from Sydney, Australia one time, and he's saying, you know, guys just came over still. We just met. No
yeah,
one
yeah,
really made a fuss about it. We
yeah,
had breakfast and had some men's meetings here, and, just
yeah,
sharing that brotherhood, that community together. And it's pretty cool to see how many guys have come out and said, this is what we're about. Yeah, we're
yeah,
not alone here. And that's been one of my goals, is to let people know you're not alone. There's other guys out there. It's just, we kind of just have to find each other in a way. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, that's what saved me. That's what drew
Yeah.
me in. And I speak to your experience. I do think that when lockdowns hit and the pandemic was going on in 2020,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people realized very quickly like how different they were at their cause to a lot of people they knew. And that only
Yes.
served to, certainly for those who spoke up against it and weren't just entirely compliant, that served to isolate even those people even further in some regards.
Hmm.
And so to find this platform in that isolation was almost a driver to seek other like-minded individuals out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think what we realized is that a lot of our core beliefs did not align with many of the people we knew. And
Mm.
okay, yeah, it's great. He's a drinking buddy, or we watch sports together, or we like the same films, the TV shows, the same books. Our kids go to the same school, and it's like, oh wow, actually, we are fundamentally different people.
Very different.
you know,
Very different.
we are
Yes.
fundamentally different people, and I don't know what that means now.
I know.
I don't know how
I
important liking the same TV show really is. And
yes,
so
I
it
know.
drove people to find those
Yeah.
other men who shared those core beliefs. And now, hobbies and interests are barely anything we ever discuss
Hmm.
because we share a core value system that unites us and is far more important and far more potent to talk about
Mm.
than, what we're watching on Netflix or,
Yes.
you know,
Whatever. Yes.
yeah,
I totally understand. Yes, that is a very good word. That's one of the things I tell my wife I enjoy about this the most, is that I get to see other men who are in the fight. They're going at it. We are like-minded. In many ways, we may have some minor differences, but that's okay. We have the same mission and we're on the same goal, and that is to become better men. And I think what you've said today has been spot on in capturing that mission that I have, that vision that I have. And I think you have given the men listening not only something to think about, but something to pursue as they look to strive after that brotherhood, after that community, after that sacrificial purpose that they may be looking for right now. And
Yep.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, and I'm encouraged by it. I really am.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to anyone about it, really. But
Yeah. Hey.
certainly to talk to someone who I respect and I've connected with. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to sit down. And I always say when I'm on my podcast, if no one watches, no one listens, I will take away all of the amazing conversations I had with guys that I would never
Exactly.
have otherwise been able to speak to. And
Exactly. Yes.
to your point, I think you find um, you come to this crossroads where you have those people you used to know, where it's like, yeah, you're great to talk to about Netflix, about to go for a drink with, to watch sports with, but you wouldn't have my back in this fight.
Yep.
And then there's these other people, these other guys, all the dudes I've met on Twitter, and it's like, yeah, do you know what? I trust that you'd have my back. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care what book you're reading. I don't care what show you're watching. I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
know that if it came to it, we would be side by side.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's all that matters. That's all that matters for men,
That's good.
is to find
Yeah.
other men like that.
Yeah. I'm right there with you, and I can now say that you are one of those people that would be right there as well.
Likewise,
And
man.
if somebody wants to reach out to you or ask some questions, where's the best place to do that? Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter's the best place, at
Okay.
Fathers Reforged, because Fatherhood Reforged was too many characters.
Yeah. I'll
But
put that in the description in the comments or whatever. And that way guys can reach out to you if they want to. But
yeah,
I have two questions.
go
I
for it.
asked my kids, I always ask, when it's kind of a international type call here,
Sure.
which I have to explain that to them. But I say, what do you want me to ask? And they said, what's one thing that's different in South Wales that we would kind of find odd here in the States?
Okay. I guess there's a lot of slang from the Welsh language that gets
Okay.
used a lot. And for example, cwtch, it means to cuddle, basically. But
Huh.
it's Welsh. And then we have a lot of castles too, which is awesome. Right, that's one of the good
Yeah,
things of living in the UK,
that is
is we have
cool. Yeah.
phenomenal. We do castles really well, or we did castles really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and certainly coming to Wales, all the travel signs are in Welsh and English.
Okay.
At
They would
least
like that.
everything that's put in by the government is bilingual.
My son's question was, is there any unique animals there? And I said,
Uh,
I wasn't real sure, but
yeah, our wildlife is pretty lackluster, if I'm honest.
yeah.
We made sure everything that was remotely interesting went extinct. Um, we don't have bears or wolves, or we have golden eagles, not in Wales
Oh,
specifically, but we have peregrine falcons in Wales.
oh, he'll love that. He loves
Yeah, which
he
is pretty
loves
cool.
all things animals.
Fastest animal on land.
Yes. He will love that. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for
Everything else
sharing
is
that.
pretty boring.
Well, I'm in Illinois and it's pretty boring here too. So there's not too much here either, but we have a couple of bald eagles, so there we go. We'll have
There you
that in
go.
common. Last question, and here's how I
Yep.
end all my podcasts, is that I want to give you an opportunity to challenge the men with something. It could be maybe for this week. It could be maybe for the rest of this year, whatever it may be. Give the men something they can really be challenged by.
Okay. And I've got it. And this kind of ties in to what we were just talking about in terms of, the people you used to bother with and the men you can call brothers. Is really sit down and have a think about the other men in your life, right? And think about whether they're friends or whether they're brothers, right? Because I think there's a stark difference. And your brothers can be your friends, and there's, but it's not always, it doesn't always work out that way. So we have a lot of men in our life that we consider friends, but we really need to figure out the fundamental difference between friendships and brotherhood. And men thrive on brotherhood. We do not thrive on friendships. You need to go through the men in your life and ask yourself, are they by my side in this fight? And if they're not, well, I'll leave that up to you. But it seems like perhaps, at least in my situation, I tend to pull back from those people because it's a time investment that I just don't have, being a working father, a homeschooling family. So it doesn't bring you as much fulfillment as you might think. Maybe you can go out drinking with the guys and you think you've really enjoyed yourself, but you should always be. I think maybe it was Jordan Peterson who said you should be chasing fulfillment and not happiness. And I'm going to come off this call extremely fulfilled. But if we were just shooting about TV shows, about a sports game, okay, we might feel a bit of joy, but what does it bring you ultimately? How does it help you grow as a man? I think men should always be pursuing growth and really think about those two groups. Who are your friends and who are your brothers? And there's no reason they can't be both, but many people aren't.
That's really good. There's your challenge, man. I've really appreciated this. I've been encouraged. I've been fulfilled, like you said as well. I really am. I've been encouraged by this, and I hope the guys listening are as well. I really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I'll have to have you on the Reforged.
Sure. That'd be fun.
Soon.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so
It'd be
much
fun.
for the opportunity. And thank you everyone who was listening. And it was really great that you reached out. I'm very grateful.
You got it. Same here. And well, men, I think there's a lot to be challenged by. I think there's a lot to be encouraged by. But until next time, go and be a better man this week.